Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus. Welcome back to another Monday. Hopefully you had a rejuvenating weekend. If not, sorry about it. I'm just trying to get the week kicked off right.
Sorry about it.
Joining me as always is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. I think I have a really cute joke for you. What do you call an ant who fights crime?
Ant-Man.
I mean, technically, you are correct. There is already a superhero called that. But it's a vigilante.
Ew. Vigilante.
I like how you took that so literally, though.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully, we'll change this intro one day.
Maybe. That caught me off.
I just know if we feel tired of saying it, I've got to think of a new way to say this intro.
Or we just skip it all and get right into the stories.
Oh, but then anybody that's new coming in won't know what we're about.
We have 100 other videos that they can figure that out.
Figure it out.
If they can't, then we've done it wrong.
I guess that's true too. Damus,
Voyse.
we have a new shout out to make. Welcome to the Tea Club, Elise Nettle.
What's the for?
It reminds me of stinging nettle with the raspberry bits, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to make that tea again.
I thought you were going to go for like Nutella.
Nutella.
That's what I was thinking about. He said
Welcome to the Tea Club.
Yes, welcome in. Love and appreciate you.
We don't have the Nutella sandwiches for you, Damus, but I do have the tea. Why don't you go ahead and pick it up? It's some green tea that has raspberry, blackberries, lemon peel, and pineapple to make it fruity.
I'll be honest, all I heard was green tea. So.
You're already not liking it, but how can you not like this?
Dang. All right, fine. You found a green tea that I actually like.
I put a spell on you.
That's a 10 out of 10.
Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your morning cup of brew, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for refusing to chip in to my brother's wedding? My 26 male brother, 28 male, is getting married this fall. He has always been my parents' favorite without a doubt, while I got the short end of the stick. Not pouting, but just stating the obvious. My parents are using the last of their retirement savings to pay for this wedding before they sell the house and downsize to a much smaller place. My brother wants a lot for his wedding. Roughly estimated it's costing him about $80,000. My brother is a lawyer practicing as a public defender, making about $75,000 a year, and has about $7,000 total saved up. Not a typo, $7,000 of $80,000. I know how to save money, and I have close to $150,000 saved up. My family is all chipping in as much as they can, and it's all adding up to about $24,000. The bride's side of the family said they're chipping in half the total cost for the wedding, so $40,000. They have $64,000 combined and are trying to find $16,000 when they turn to me. I told them straight up I'm not giving them money, but I can loan it to them. No interest, just pay me back $16,000 at the end of 3 years. I tried to give them multiple opportunities to take it and let them know I would not just give them money. My brother is considering uninviting me from the wedding, and my parents have been blowing up my phone with messages and calls. After a few weeks of stewing in it and realizing he wasn't going to be able to find the money elsewhere, and with his credit history, a personal loan without a 10 to 12% interest rate is impossible, he came back to me and asked for the loan. We hugged it out and talked about it, and about 3 hours later, I printed up a little contract that says I would either be paid back in full at the end of 3 years from this date, or that I could take monthly or yearly installments however he wants it to be paid. When I busted out the contract, he got upset, saying I don't have faith in him. I don't. He's defaulted on 2 car loans, and his credit score is around the 470s last time he checked. He has $300,000 worth of student loan debt from undergrad and law school, and I know he's not smart with his money, so I wanted it in writing. That apparently was the final straw. I am officially uninvited and have been asked to not contact him or my parents ever again. The truth is, I'll say I'm sorry and admit when I'm wrong, but am I wrong asking for a contract for $16,000? That's a lot of money. I'm not saying I'm going to sue him the day after the loan window expires for the amount, but I want some sort of receipt saying that he owes me back for this. So am I the a-hole? Let me go ahead and add a little extra information from our OP in one of the comments. In his comments, he said, so the way it happened with my family is my mom and dad gave $12,000, my younger brother $3,000, and my older sister $4,000, and him chipping in $7,000 to get the $24,000. And when my sister got married, she didn't need money because she had enough herself and her husband chipped in half. It was literally just the two of them, and they had a big wedding that was around $50,000. My brother is just extra. When it comes to the story and the bride and her side of the family, they've already pitched in $40,000. But our OP doesn't give us the breakdown of how much the bride specifically versus parents or siblings pitched in for it.
So we know that the groom has pitched in 7, and the bride, again, you lumped it in together, $40K. We don't know what she contributed to that.
Correct.
But they need to make a difference up of $16,000, which when you're looking at the big picture, $16,000 as far as a wedding is concerned, is if that's all you had to really come up with, that's a pretty good wedding.
I still think $80,000 for a wedding is too much. But
sure,
that's
but
just me.
We've seen some pretty extravagant weddings lately. Good luck getting a wedding under $50,000 today, based off of what people's wants are. I think learning how to live within your means and being happy with what you can do instead of having to outsource it till you can do something, in my opinion, is better. But you're allowed to live the way you'd like to. And if your family can pitch in around 80% of that wedding cost for you, I guess go for it. But I think a lot of people now are turning away from the bigger weddings and using that money for, a down payment on a home or a nice honeymoon. I know my brother is about to do that. They're having a smaller wedding, but they're about to have an amazing month-long trip in New Zealand and spend that time together where it matters instead of having it all be on this one day where, I can speak for us. We had an amazing wedding, but some of those memories get lost in the wash. And if I could do it all over again, I think I'd rather go ahead and spend it on a nice long honeymoon. But
had I realized that was ever an option back when we got married, I probably would have insisted on that instead.
But hey, life is 2020 always. But this is how they want to go about it. It sounds like they have a lot of money troubles already. A career can only take you so far. Earning money and earning a lot of it's amazing, but you have to learn also how to spend it and use it wisely. It doesn't sound like ROP's older brother is on that track yet. And he's very wary of that. And I can understand it. He defaulted on loans over and over again. He was the favorite with his parents to the point where the parents now are using the last of their retirement to help fund this man-child's wedding because no one's going to loan him money because he's proven over and over again that he is not good with it. So how are you going to come to someone that you already know you don't have a good relationship with and ask for that amount of money?
Because they're family.
I wouldn't even suggest what you were trying to do, OP, which was give him a contract. Even if that was signed in his blood, that doesn't mean anything to him. He's already proven that. Through his history. Because he's not doing it to the credit companies that he's borrowed from. So I'm happy it didn't work out the way you had tried to. Because even if you have zero interest, you're not getting a penny back. Good on you for offering that. At least there was an option for him. Now, could you have kicked over a little bit of money? Maybe not the 16 initially when he asked, maybe
$1,000.
Yeah, a couple $1,000 just to go, hey, look, we're all family. We're all pitching in towards this. Hopefully you can make up the difference after I give you what I think is acceptable. Would that have been great? Yeah, but you don't owe anybody that, especially given the relationship. I think what's worse here is the golden child had the family attack him. And he says that everyone was blowing up his phone to try to force him into giving over $16,000. So OP, in my opinion, you're not the a-hole. It's probably better off that you don't have your brother and your parents
guilting.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And it looks like it's probably just snowballed into this thing where they feel entitled to what you own. They did you a favor, in my opinion.
So the consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. Redditors said that others shouldn't feel obligated to help financially in something that they don't have the responsibility to help in. It's great that other families wants to pitch in, but in the end, that should always be a choice, not a forced obligation. And I also have to agree with it. You outlined it really well, Timstradamus. The relationship between OP and his brother doesn't appear to be a close one. And while our OP did say at the beginning that, his older brother is the parent's favorite and he doesn't have any qualms on that, you can definitely somewhat feel a little bit of the resentment, because you're very right. The parents also go in and attack. And then he's uninvited from the wedding just because he can't pay for his part. That's a really sad way to look at it. Honestly, I also side with you that his brother and the parents did him a favor. If you're going to have toxic family, they're not really family. They're just toxic people in the end, and you don't need that.
Agreed.
Well, I do wish our OP the best. And let's go on to our next story and see what you think about a hoe phase.
What? A hoe phase?
A hoe phase.
What is that?
I guess you'll find out. For our next story, lost interest in a girl because of her hoe phase. I, male, have this friend. She is nice looking, outgoing, funny. We met in school and hit it off as friends. We hung out together or as a group, or me and my girlfriend with her and her boyfriend a few times a week. We have never really been single at the same time, so I never really noticed her romantically. I mean, I noticed she was attractive, but never thought of her romantically. I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend, and a few months later, she broke up with her boyfriend. Well, because most of our friends are paired off at the time, we end up hanging out like 4 days a week. I wasn't aware I was starting to catch feelings for this girl until someone pointed out I stopped dating and approaching other women. It really hit home when she went on a few different dates and I noticed I was jealous. So I sat her down and had a chat, told her I've noticed recently I was becoming interested in her. I absolutely hated seeing her go on dates with other guys and wanted to see if us dating would be as cool as our friendship so far. First, she smiled, big, happy, excited eyes. Then something happened. Her smile turned unsure. She explained she had thought of it as well and is interested in giving it a try, but not to the end of the summer. Confused, I asked why the end of the summer. She explained she was in her hoe phase, her words, and she wanted to have a summer of fun before she settled down. The rest of that day was awkward. I cut things short. When she asked, I told her we were fine. My pride was bruised a bit and I was feeling disappointed. But not to worry, we are definitely still friends. I have to admit, the second she chose potentially random hookups and getting run through for the summer over a relationship, all romantic feelings died. I wasn't mad at her. She did nothing wrong, but the way I viewed her had changed. She was forever in the friend zone for me. I took a few days, put my big boy pants on, and we started hanging out again. But it was different. I only saw her as a friend, and I only was interested in seeing her every now and again, not all the time like before. I started dating other girls again. I had no hard feelings. I genuinely enjoyed being around her, only like before when we both had spouses. Anyway, one night we were out as a group. We all had a few drinks and she says, "Hey, good news. Summer's almost over." Oblivious to what she meant till later, I say, "That sucks. I love summer." Then I got distracted by other conversations being had. I did notice she was cold towards me the rest of the night. October rolls around. She wants to do lunch, just her and I. We meet up, having a great talk. We talked about our summer. She talks about all the guys she dated over the summer. She used this to steer the conversation to us. She wanted to let me know she was ready to settle into a relationship and wanted to go back to our earlier conversation. I told her it's cool. I valued our friendship and think we should just stay as friends. She wanted to know what's changed and would not let it go, so I had to be honest. I told her that her choice to put me on the back burner for hot girl summer was hurtful, and I feel like if she actually liked me, she would have wanted to be in a relationship with me. She said she knew we would be the real thing and she needed to get through her hoe phase to give us an honest shot. I let her know the facts she felt We could have been something, and she still chose potentially to get run through by a bunch of strangers instead of starting something real, tells me she doesn't feel about me the way she thinks she does. I accept that and stayed friends with her with no hard feelings. But the second she chose to put me on the back burner, I lost all romantic feelings for her. Forever, because it feels like she's shopping around all summer and settled on me. And I am nobody's backup plan. She got mad, stopped talking to me. Our friends think I should apologize and give her a chance, but those feelings just aren't there. What do you think? Am I the a-hole? I should probably add a timeline. This was last summer. We had seen each other around, but she avoids me if she can. The reason I wrote this now is because a mutual friend and I were talking about last summer, how the fall went, then pointed out she is still single and asked me recently if I have/would changed my mind. I don't think they are asking for her because they said she still thinks I'm an ass. Am I an a-hole?
What the spasimittaboo? He's asking if he's the a-hole if he doesn't want to date someone because they had different values.
Correct.
Why would that make you an a-hole? I don't see him being disrespectful towards her. He was still in a friendship. He didn't cut that off immediately. He says things have pulled back and he didn't want to spend as much time with her. But he didn't say, ultimately, the only reason why I was hanging out with her to begin with was because I was trying to get in her pants. I didn't hear that. He said he genuinely enjoyed hanging out with her until he dawned on him that he actually liked her, that he caught the feels. You're allowed to have your values. You're also allowed to not let other people dictate your values in life. Can I blame your friend for wanting to figure out what she wants in life and date around? No. If those are things you want to do with your life, you're allowed to. We're all allowed to walk whatever path we choose. But that doesn't mean other people have to accept it. Again, you didn't throw those things in her face. She continued to ask you until you gave her the answer. She should have just accepted that you didn't want to date. Why do we need a full explanation and can't accept people's no's?
That's very true.
So no, in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole. And at some point you will bump into the person that shares those same values.
And is the right one for you.
Yep.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. There were Redditors that say that they can understand how OP feels and they wouldn't want to be put on the back burner like that. There were other individuals who said OP was immature, but simply for the fact that he kept saying that she was run through. I think that all depends on how young you are and how you see the world. Both sides are entitled to be hurt. I think in the end, the crux of it is when feelings aren't mutual for each other, you shouldn't feel guilted into starting anything that doesn't feel right with you. And like you said, doesn't hit each other's values. I know if I was young and I had met someone and I told them, look, I'd like to start a relationship. I think it'd be really fun. And they turned around and said, yeah, wait a month. I just want to go have fun with a bunch of other people before I settle down with you. That would sting so bad. My interest would be to zero at that point. The fact that OP was still cordial and understood, look, the relationship didn't start. Yeah, the choice of words and how everything panned out really sucked, but I know where I stand. I really hand it at least to OP in regards to understanding that just because something didn't work out doesn't mean that it needs to change them to be another person. And the same goes the other way around. This girl can be hurt. Definitely. I believe in her mind, she probably thought, well, he didn't say no, so it must mean yes. That is honestly a really bad way to look at things. If you don't get the answer that you're looking for right then and there and seeing that the person that you're offering a really weird deal to doesn't seem to be on board with it, you need to understand how they feel and not just assume that they are okay with it.
Yeah.
Because that's not good either.
I would never advocate for getting into a relationship where you don't feel like the priority. That's what I guess what this really does come down to. He's allowed to have those feelings and she's allowed to go live life the way she wants to.
But she's also allowed to be hurt too.
Yes.
And I get it. If she no longer wants to be his friend, she doesn't have to be his friend anymore. But those are just the consequences of actions. You can't expect someone to be okay with everything that you want in life, especially when it comes to other people's feelings.
They're just not the person for you.
That's right. Well, let's go on to our next story. And this was actually suggested by one of our listeners. And I'm really excited to actually read this for you.
We haven't had one of these in a minute.
I know. For our next story. Am I the a-hole for dating my friend's therapist despite her pleading me not to? Throwaway, as I don't want to dox myself. I have a very tight-knit group of friends. We are always there for each other for all the ups and downs. I see them all as my sister and have never done anything that would affect them negatively. A few years back, something really horrible happened to one of them, Susan, and she went into a downward spiral. After many shitty therapists, she finally found one that worked for her, and she started to slowly crawl herself out of the darkness. We were all so happy for her. I moved away to a nearby city about 5 months ago. My new home is about an hour-and-a-half ride away from where I grew up. When all the necessities were paid for, I went on an impromptu holiday to Greece when I calculated that I had some money to spare. There, I met an amazing guy on my first day in a restaurant. We immediately clicked. This has never happened to me before. I initially planned a hiking type of solo holiday, but we spent all 11 days together. I found out he lives in the same city that I moved to, so naturally he changed his ticket and came back with me. I told my friends about it, and everyone was happy for me, even Susan. During the holiday, he did tell me he worked in the mental health field, but we were too busy enjoying our time together to be talking about the specifics of work. When we returned, we continued dating. We still are. Long story short, turns out he is Susan's therapist. When it finally clicked for her, she told me I had to drop him. She said she was happy for me having a holiday fling, but she didn't feel comfortable that I was dating the guy that had all her confidential info and that he might even be breaking some HIPAA rules by dating me. I told her neither one of us knew and that she herself felt that he was a great therapist, so why couldn't she trust that he would keep it professional? I told her that he hadn't told me anything about any of his clients, and I had never asked him about it either. We were always in the moment with each other instead of worrying about who and what happened during work hours. At her next appointment, she confronted him and had asked him to dump me or she would report him. He reassured her that he would never violate patient confidentiality, but she kept harassing him for the next few appointments. He talked to me about her harassing him to dump me as it wasn't part of patient confidentiality. He wanted to know if I felt the same way about him as he did about me and if we had a future together, and I said yes. After that, he recused himself from being her therapist and recommended one of his colleagues to her. Since then, Susan has been on a smear campaign against me, and our tight-knit group isn't so tight anymore. She didn't take him up on his recommendation, and due to being out of therapy, she has started to drink again, and one of our friends told me she rarely bathes, and other parts of her hygiene have suffered too. She has also skipped a lot of days of work and might lose her job. She isn't faking her downward spiral, but I can't go through with what she and our other friends want me to do. They say he is just a man and there are millions of men out there for me, so why won't I dump him for her? It took Susan this long to find a good therapist, and that it took her an hour and a half to drive to him, but she did it despite the commute to get better. According to them, she might not find a good therapist closer or within that driving distance, as she has exhausted all nearby possibilities. They are telling me that I am risking her life for a holiday fling. Am I the a-hole for being the hurdle in her recovery? Let me give you an edit from our OP that is very lengthy but provides more information. Since a lot of people misunderstood the timeline and are confused about HIPAA, I'll give some more info here. I tried to post this earlier on, but after typing it out, it wouldn't post, so I am trying again. I did not date him for 11 days before she found out, unlike so many have posted here, and the numerous people who have wished death upon me in the chat. We were together for those 11 days in Greece, and then we dated for 2 months before she figured out my new boyfriend was her therapist. During those 2 months, we spent almost every evening together and the weekends too. I guess you can call it speed racing a relationship, but I have never met anyone like him before, and he feels the same about me. The first session after it clicked for her, she used to tell him to dump me. He never told me she was his patient. She outed herself as his patient. The next 2 sessions they had, she also used to convince him to dump me while he was trying to help her to transition to someone else. But she spent them trying to convince him to dump me. She told me all of this, and a lot of our mutual friends referred to this because obviously she shared this info with them. The 4th session didn't even start because she had the jacket on and hadn't even closed the door before she went full nuclear about reporting him for dating someone from her close social circle. Something she had mentioned in the first session too. He didn't get paid for it, even though legally he could despite it not counting as a session. 4 sessions in 2.5 weeks. He wasn't stringing her along for a long time before letting her go. The smear campaign started almost immediately and lasted 3 out of the 5 months of my relationship with him. He works in a building that is subsidized by the branch that is responsible for health in our country. But they also take private clients/patients, as there are a few other types of health workers, including specialized nurses. They have people that are regulators of the practice. He went to one of his senior colleagues, and one of these regulators, therapists with administrative role, that also provide therapy for those that work in this field. After confirming that he could discuss this issue with me, he mentioned about the harassment in the last session because it is not covered under patient confidentiality. The session wasn't even regarded as a session. This regulator told him to tell me about the harassment, as significant others can be targeted by patients. See below for more details. Him coming to me and asking me about our future is something I worked out after the fact of the timeline of events. He was intent on stopping to see her anyways when I told him he was her therapist. But when I did, he neither confirmed nor denied it. Only after the 4th session did he mention the harassment because his workplace wanted texts confirming that she had outed herself in case she wanted to make a false claim. I didn't type out every detail as I wanted to give a quicker, shorter version to read. Due to an incident in our country where a mental health worker's son was stabbed by a patient that stalked him home and started harassing him, certain things are not covered under patient confidentiality, as she outed herself and he hasn't mentioned anything. I don't know how things work in your country, but everyone does not live in the USA. Legally, he hasn't broken any laws as significant others can and do get notified if there are concerns. This is why they advise therapists not to have recent pictures of children and to not use their legal names for social media that can be used to track their daily routine. There are other safeguards too, so stop saying he broke the law. I am his significant other, and he only mentioned the harassment after okaying it with his work so I could be aware for my own safety. The bigger city I am in is not a metropolis like New York or Tokyo. My country only has a handful of millions in the entire country. The bigger city is bigger than the previous one, but a lot of you would probably call it a small city. The fact that I would bump into someone from my country in that region of the world, which is probably the #1 holiday destination for my people, are high. Even higher when we both live in the city closest to the airport. I hope this clears things up.
'Tis peak, my lord. She does clarify a lot of things. It sounds like a lot of people were very upset if she was saying she was receiving death threats in the comment section.
I'm assuming because he's a therapist and, of course, is dating someone in a close circle to one of his clients, that they just jumped on board that he should just stop it regardless of whatever's happening, even if he recuses himself. That feels like such gray area, but let's go ahead and hear you out, Damas.
They met serendipitously, on vacation, that they ended up changing all their plans for in the middle of. It was going to be a hiking trip and it turned into 11 days of just spending time with someone you found. And then you find out that you live in the same country, same city, and he ends up booking his ticket to come back with you. How wild is all of that?
So romantic.
And they dated for 2 months, I guess, before the friend found out that, unfortunately, that is her therapist. I think Susan's the friend.
Correct.
And she outlines why they may or may not be ethical based off where she lives. So that's a good place to start. She's only asking if she's the a-hole for not dumping her now boyfriend when she found out the facts. In my opinion, I don't believe so. It isn't like ROP went out of her way to find the therapist and go, I'm going to date you because you're Susan's and I want to get all the information on Susan's life. Now, I understand where Susan, because it sounds like, and I am so sorry for what Susan went through and what she is currently going through, because they described it. This is a downward spiral now, where she had finally found her therapist, and it is very hard for people to find their person. I can understand and sympathize with that. But when something outside of your control happens, in this case, a relationship that sparks up between a friend and a random person in the ocean of people, it shouldn't be your goal in life to separate them because of your insecurities. Again, Susan does sound like she is very, very in need of help. But those two things can exist in the same sentence. You can not be the a-hole, and Susan can be someone I empathize with. I hope she gets the help she needs. Morally, if you want to look at it like the second he found out that somehow he was dating Susan's friend, and he is Susan's therapist, maybe at that point you definitely should have gone ahead and recused yourself sooner. I don't know how the time span happened, but my biggest interest in this whole story is, how does Susan find out that he's dating her friend? Does she clarify?
Does not clarify that information. Just says that Susan figured it out.
I would just wonder how, because this whole thing gets kicked off with the assumption that the therapist is now going to divulge everything she knows about Susan to OP.
It sounds like where they live is very strict when it comes to sharing social media pictures. So I imagine if you have a very close friend, rather than put up pictures on social media because you're trying to make sure that everybody's safe because of the mental health care laws for the actual workers, that they would share with family or friends like pictures side by side and be like, look, this is the fun thing we did. And then she saw it and was probably really shocked. That's how I imagine it working out.
Okay. I would say that I don't believe OP is the a-hole. There are things in this story that kind of raise your eyebrow, but as long as it came from where RP is saying it came from, that it's just they bumped into each other and this just romance happened,
which is generally how relationships start,
then I don't see where she would be the a-hole.
So the consensus on Reddit was actually pretty mixed here. You had many that believe the situation goes well beyond just black and white. They have individuals who, based on where they're at, find it unethical. And then you have individuals that find it morally questionable. There's, of course, the spins on trying to make everybody look like a villain here. When it comes to the therapist, which is our OP's boyfriend, essentially trying to seek out someone from Susan's friend group, which personally, I don't believe that's necessarily true. He'd have to know that this particular friend was going on this impromptu trip just randomly.
First, you'd have to ask yourself, why would he care so much?
There are very questionable people out there in the world. Who knows when it comes to that? Now, the other side of the coin here was that the moment that the boyfriend found out that he was dating a client's close friend, he should have instantly broke off. Now, that's where, for me, I kind of push back on that. Our OP's boyfriend had the choice. And just like everybody else has a choice, you could either let go of the client or let go of the relationship. That's generally how I feel that would go. I think this would have been a morally questionable person had he tried to maintain both, which he did not. He said, look, I'm going to step away from being your therapist. I have another person that I can recommend that I think is really good. Let's go ahead and transition you over to this new person. It was Susan's choice to reject it because she wanted it her way. Yeah. And that's where I think Susan, for me, mind you, I understand mental health is a huge thing. However, you cannot use that to control other people.
Yeah, agreed.
And Susan was trying to control her therapist because that's what she wanted. In my mind, the moment that those two planes of existence crossed, I don't think that it would have been correct, regardless of whether the boyfriend maintained the relationship with his girlfriend, which is our OP, or whether he would turn around and try and maintain his professional relationship. There was no way that he could have that professional relationship anymore. There would always be that doubt in Susan that somewhere along the way, maybe he might hit one of my other friends somewhere out there in the world, because that's how Susan is acting. She's trying to tell him what to do. That's not healthy for anyone. He's a therapist. He's there to help you professionally, not for you to control him.
In his personal life?
Now, the other side of the coin here is this individual turned around to her OP and said, look, I know this situation's really weird. I do have feelings for you, but I'm also not going to force you to stay in a relationship with me if it is not something that you want to do. Our OP's boyfriend allowed her to pick what she wanted. Now, you can have anybody and everybody tell you what to do in your life. I don't think friends should be allowed to control that. You can be there to offer advice based on certain experiences, but to say that you can and cannot have a relationship with someone because unfortunately this series of events happened, I think is very unfair. I would also like to bring up another point that Redditors also brought up, and how you, I guess, phrased the question of how did Susan find out. I have to question if whether the lines between Susan and the therapist blurred for Susan. And maybe if somewhere along the way there wasn't some form of romantic feelings starting in a way that has Susan clutching so tightly to essentially demand that he dump his girlfriend, which is a friend. I truly understand that. But I wonder if there were more feelings in that. I know that sometimes there are, unfortunately, instances where the feeling of someone helping you and being there for you blurs to a romantic type nature. And it's one of the reasons why apparently in this country, those blurred lines, they take seriously when it comes to significant others and family members and their safety.
It could be. We don't know enough about Susan. I will say this, though. I hope she gets the help she needs.
I agree. I do wish Susan the best. I don't think that there's anything that can be repaired when it comes to the friendship between OP and her friend group. This is probably just something that...
Oh, sure. It sounds like it's cut everyone, even in a Reddit thing, if we're saying it's split right down the middle as far as morals and ethics.
Well, let's go on to our next story, and it's our last one. I'll lead us off with something just a little bit more lighthearted. Today, I fucked up by slapping my wife's ass right in front of her parents. Context: my in-laws, who are quite conservative, are staying at our house for the weekend. Now, my wife is thick, double C. And usually I slap my wife on the ass like 20 times a day. 20 might even be an underestimate. Me and my wife both love it, and my wife would probably think something was seriously wrong if I didn't do it. Anyways, so after we had lunch today, my wife was bending over while wearing yoga pants, so I excitedly went over to her and smacked her ass really hard. I started giggling until I realized that my in-laws were also in the dining room and they saw the whole thing. My father-in-law wasn't too pissed and actually laughed about it, which surprised me. He muttered something like, "Boys will be boys." But my mother-in-law is hella mad at me. My wife was also mad at me for embarrassing her in front of her parents. It's been a few hours since that happened, and mother-in-law and wife are still mad at me, especially mother-in-law. Mother-in-law hasn't even said a single word to me since then. The too long don't read slapped my wife's ass in front of her conservative parents, and now both my wife and mother-in-law are mad at me.
No. They're hella mad at you. All I'm envisioning is he's seeing his opening, it's happening, and he's running going, hee. He doesn't see them at the corner.
I just think it's so funny because you giggled, and that's exactly how
That's
I
what I
imagined
saw.
him. Well, let me go ahead and give you a commenter's reply to OP regarding this. They said, "This does not compare to the time I smacked my dad's ass thinking it was my wife. She had been standing right behind me, but switched places with my dad unbeknownst to me. So I just reached back and gave her a quick smack. I immediately knew it wasn't right because my wife has a great ass and my dad is an old man." There was another commenter that replied to that and said, "At least it was your dad and not her dad." And then the last commenter replied and said, "Established dominance."
That's basically.
I just find it funny because I think for me, this story really rings that in a private setting, people are more lax and comfortable with each other. And when you realize that you have certain company that you don't want to see the relaxed things that you like to do behind closed doors in your own home, it can generally lead to a lot of mini dramas, I guess. I think regardless, they'll be just fine.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's something that they agreed upon is acceptable in their relationship. Unfortunately, yes, the dad didn't have a problem with it, but the conservative mom was like, "Not today, son."
He's all like, "But honey, we do that."
The technique was flawless. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
It's a fun one to end off on.
Yeah, I thought intimacy gone a little wrong with a little drama was pretty funny.
Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays and Wednesdays. And on our Patreon, we have Damas After Dark episodes where we take things in another way. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious. All very interesting situations.
I was about to say, what way do we take them?
Magical.
It's a way to start the weekend, I guess.
Wow, make it sound any more boring. Come join us.
You could, I guess.
How dare you, sir? We would also love to thank all of our Teatreons for all of your continued support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of y'all.
Mwah!
And as always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
I feel like that therapist one is really going to divide everything.
I mean, I can understand it from both sides. I still will always err on the side of you're not allowed to tell people how to live their life. But I definitely look forward to hearing the opinions about that story because
there's a lot of feels here.
You can definitely understand it, or you should at least be open to seeing it from both sides. Outside of, again, you can't tell people what to do.
Agreed. And
remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.
I just randomly want some peach cobbler right now.
That sounds amazing, actually.
Let's do it.
Allons-y.